Hey everybody, welcome to Home Recording MadeEasy.com, VisionRecordingStudios.com, and here on our YouTube channel. And yes, today I'm a bum. So before the comments come, yes, I'm a bum. Today I want to show you a couple little techniques. In this video, we're going to take a look at filtering on EQ, where we're going to use low pass and high pass filters, or low cut and high cut filters, to kind of clean up our tracks before we begin mixing, to kind of open things up a little bit. It's a nice a little tip that I've learned a while back from a mentor of mine, and I use it all the time, and it works really well. So let's take a look at the screen and let's look at what we're looking at here. So I'm sure a lot of people are looking at this and going, oh my goodness, what is that DAW? Especially my PreSonus Studio One fans. This is the new Cubase 8 Pro. The reason why I'm using Cubase 8 Pro is because a client is sent me an EP to mix, and they recorded in Cubase. So they asked me to mix it in Cubase, and that's what I did. I use lots of DAWs depending on what the client's needs are. One of them is Cubase, and Studio One and Pro Tools and Logic and blah, blah, blah. So this is the new look at Cubase 8. I've never done a video with Cubase 8 before, and I'm still getting used to it. But this is a good project, and it's a pretty cool DAW, very Studio One-like. So a lot of the features are the same, but anyhow. So what we have here is a kind of an indie rock track. And one of the things that I like to do before I even begin mixing, quote unquote, once we clean up the tracks and once I get everything kind of balanced, which is what I kind of got here, and we got some plugins rolling here, but we're going to disable them, is the very first thing I put in my insert chain after the tape machine and after my console collection, or console emulation plugin, would be an EQ. And I like to use the first EQ slot as kind of a filtering EQ, where I'm filtering the lows and the highs. So let me show you what I mean. So let me first disable all the other plugins. So we're just dealing with EQ here. So give me a second, because it's a little different in Cubase than in Studio One. So we are going to bypass all our tape machines, and we are going to bypass all the console emulation for now. You can see that at the top here, when you group a bunch of tracks together in Cubase and you disable one of the plugins, as you'll see across the top here, they're all grayed out, much like Pro Tools. Very nice feature. So that's pretty cool. Makes things easy. What we're dealing with here is this plugin underneath, the third plugin in the chain. And this is the an EQ by Fab Filter called the Pro Q, which I really like. Did I say I really like the Fab Filter Pro Q? Awesome EQ, very transparent type of an EQ, great for the clinical type of work. Doesn't add any character, really, doesn't add any mojo or vibe like the vintage stuff, but it's really good for this kind of filtering stuff and taking out bad frequencies. So here on the kick in mic, what I'm doing here, and let me demonstrate by again, let me mute all these tracks here and just open up the kick mic. So let's take a listen. There we go. Okay, so this is just the kick-in mic. You may have to turn up your speakers a little bit here. But what I like to do is I like to filter out the lows and the highs to get rid of any low rumble that might have been going on in the room at the time of the recording, and any of the high stuff where maybe you had some mic bleed if there's other instruments in the room, and just to kind of clean things up, to focus in on really the frequencies I want to focus on. So in this particular case, I'll turn up this kick drum a little bit so we can hear it. And let's delete this and let's start from scratch to show you what I kind of mean. And you could do this with any EQ at all. Doesn't matter if it's a stock EQ or this EQ or any kind of EQ. So the very first thing I like to do on the kick drum especially is I want to find the fundamental of the instrument, fundamental frequency of the instrument. Which means, where is the instrument, where would we be doing a little boosting to really bring out the body and the real fundamental frequency of that instrument. So on a kick drum, if we bring up a point here and kind of narrow the Q, so right about there, about 58 hertz is where kind of the fundamental is, and you can see that on the graphic display here. So I'm going to lower this gain a little bit, just going to boost it up about 3 dB. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a low cut filter. And you might say to yourself, geez, why would you add a low cut filter to a kick drum? Let's get rid of this one for a second now that we've found the fundamental. And we're going to filter it off around 28-30 hertz. The fundamental was about 60, so I want to go a little bit below that. And I'm going to show you why in a second. So what we want to do is we want to get rid of anything below the fundamental, or not right at the fundamental frequency, but a little bit off from that. If the fundamental is 60, around 30, 40 hertz, we want to kind of roll that off. What's great about this EQ is once you put the filter on, if you want to audition just the frequencies that you're rolling off, you click on these little headphones, and then you're going to have to turn up your monitors here to be able to hear this. If you're listening to this on an iPhone or a laptop, you're not going to hear what I'm about to do. But if you're listening to this on studio headphones or on studio monitors, you'll hear this quite clearly. But if I click on this, you can hear some very low rumble in the bottom, which is unnecessary. We don't want that. So we're going to filter that out. If I filter a little higher, just to show you this example, now you can actually hear the kick drum. Now that's at 145 hertz. It's obviously rolling off too much. So we want to bring it back below the fundamental frequency. The fundamental was around 60, so we're going to bring it back to about 35, 38. Okay, I can still hear that real heartbeat of the thump, so let's back it off a little more. Okay, at around 35 hertz. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing on the high end. We want some high end in there for the click. Do a high cut, but we don't want a ton of high end. So let's audition that. You can see it up at, what's this, 10.5K? There's nothing really there, right? There's nothing there. So we want to roll that off. Let's move into around 6K. Now you can hear part of the snare drum that bled into the kick mic. We don't want that either. We may want the click, which is somewhere around 2K on a kick-in mic. Let's let this thing loop around again. There we go. So you can hear a little bit of the click, but you can hear more of the snare. So we can back it off to around 6K. Okay, and I do this for every track. So now I've cleaned up the low and I cleaned up the high end. We're going to try to boost a little bit of the fundamental again. It's at around 60 hertz. Narrow the Q a little. Bypass. So we went from this to this. Okay, we want to try to roll off a little bit more of that snare drum. And again, there's a trade-off here, because if you want some of the click to come through, it's kind of a trade-off here. So we're going to roll off right around 6K. And you can see the graphic display beneath it, where some of this was rolled off during recording. Now this on its own may not seem like a lot, but when you do this across all the tracks, and I've already done this, and we're going to do a before and after so you can see it. I just wanted to show you the technique. This is on the kick drum, obviously. So now let's go to like the snare where it may be a little more obvious. We'll turn down our kick drum a little. Turn up the snare so you can hear it. And we did the same thing here, as you can see. Let's wait for this loop to come around again. Okay, there we go. So again, below 100 hertz, let's turn off the kick mics so you can just hear the snare. So if you turn up your monitors or your headphones, you should be able to hear kind of that low end rumble we want to get rid of. Boosted the fundamental around 183. Bring out a little bit of body. And on the top end, we rolled off at almost 13K. You can hear that real at the top end. We don't want that in our mix. Should probably roll this off at a little bit steeper slope. Okay, and again, this is a good way to kind of just, again, clean up your tracks, get all the unwanted frequencies out before we start doing any vintage processing, before we actually put some more type of shaping EQ to notch out all the bad frequencies, just starting with filters, just to get rid of the lows, get rid of the highs, especially the low end and anything of the kick and snare, anything below about 100 hertz or so, other than the kick and the bass, I'm sorry. It's stuff you really don't want in your mix anyway. So as you can see, I've done this across all the tracks. We did just basic low and high pass filters. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of play you back the rhythm, the music piece of the of this track a little bit. Oops. Let's go to the organs. Okay, and we'll mute the vocals so they don't get in the way because we haven't mixed it yet. Now keep in mind, this track is not mixed yet. I haven't done any mixing. All we did was brought up some levels, did some panning, and put this filtering on. That's the only active plugin. So let's take a listen quickly to what we kind of have here. Going to let this thing loop around. Now, right now, all the EQs are active. They're all enabled. You can see that because all the effects, the FabFilter Pro, all the inserts are in this blue color. That means they're on. When they're in gray, they're disabled. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play back part of this section. The EQs are in now, and then I'm just going to shut them off. And when I shut one of them off, because everything is grouped together, oh, excuse me, not everything is grouped together. My fault. Again, I'm still getting used to this new Cubase 8. It's a new thing for me. But I'm working through it, so be patient. So anyhow, I grouped all the tracks. So I turn one off, they're all going to shut off, and you can see all the fab filters now have shut off, except for the last 4 here, which are the vocal tracks, which are muted. And then I'll turn it back on, and then they'll all click back on. So you'll be able to hear the effect of the high and the low pass filters and what it can do to a mix. Now again, this is subtle, so let's keep this in mind. This is not something that's going to make such a big difference that it's so obvious. You really got to be careful of what you're listening for. You're going to hear the openness of the mid-range is going to kind of open up a little bit, and it's going to kind of, there's any kind of a cloud that was kind of sitting over the instrumentation is going to be kind of lifted. So again, it's subtle. So again, you listen to this on good studio monitors or a good set of headphones, turn it up a little bit, and just kind of focus in on it, and I'll flip back and forth and you can hear the difference. We're going to start with it on, and then we're going to take it away so you can hear what happens when we lose the filtering. Okay, now we're off. Now we're on. Do it again. We'll turn it off. And let me loop it. Let me let this loop around again. Sorry. Okay, we're off now. Okay, so hopefully there you can hear the difference there. It's subtle. You can hear a little bit more of the snare crack come out. You can hear a little bit more of the top end. And has a little bit more clarity to it once you bring in the filtering. So again, it's subtle. Every track's going to be a little different. It depends on how it was recorded, whether or not it's going to make as big of a difference, because if the recording engineer did a lot of the filtering on the way in, there's going to be a lot less to do. And if you're using an EQ like the Fab filter that has a display in the background, you can kind of see what frequencies are in the way and what aren't. Some of these instruments, there was nothing down below the filter. So you can say, well, did you really need to do any filtering? Well, as a habit, I think it's a good idea. I think it's always good to just be safe and put those filters in place, and make it part of your workflow, so you don't forget to do it. And on certain tracks, it's going to make more of a difference than others. But what you will hear is the openness of the track kind of stick out a little bit more. And again, this is something I do before I begin quote unquote mixing. All I've done to this point was kind of clean my tracks, and did some balancing with the faders and did my panning to try to get the mix kind of moving before I've even really used any plugins. The tape machine and the console emulation is just there as part of my mix template, but they're disabled right now. I don't even have the signal being processed. The audio is not even being processed by those two plugins. The only thing that it's being processed right now is by the Pro Q. So that would be my first step. Do my filtering, and then after my filtering, I bring my tape machine in, my console emulation in, and start then going through each individual track and going to see where we need to boost, where we need to maybe notch out some other frequencies, and start processing as normal. So I hope that tip was helpful for you. Again, EQ filtering using high pass and low pass filters. It's a good idea. It's a good way to keep the mix sounding with as much clarity as possible. And so use it, check it out, try it out for yourself, see what you think. Hopefully it's a tip and a new part of your workflow that I might be able to add into your toolbox. So for more mixing tips and for more things mixing and mastering and EQ and compression and all things music production and mixing, go to www.homerecordingmadeeasy.com. Check out the products page and check out the Made Easy series. There are right now 2 products, Mixing Made Easy, EQ Made Easy. Lengthy tutorials that are downloadable right to your computer for a very, very, very affordable price. Tons of content there, tons of good quality training where I take you through the setup of a mix, through the mix, teach you about EQ, and there's always more Made Easy products coming, so stay tuned to that website. And until next time, this is Dave from VisionRecordingStudios.com and HomeRecordingMadeEasy.com. Take care, guys.